Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast, is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale and Clark Pro. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, my guest is Kasey Devine. Kasey is the Vice President of Strategic Growth at ProCare HR. With a background that includes key roles at TriNet and ADP, he brings an extensive experience in sales leadership, growth strategies, business process outsourcing, and business development. At ProCare HR, he plays a crucial role in driving innovative go-to-market strategies that enhance operational efficiency and employee satisfaction. Kasey's got a collaborative approach, and his expertise in advising on comprehensive HR solutions have been instrumental in empowering teams and streamlining processes. Thanks for joining me today, Kasey.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. It's great to join you and your audience. I've been a fan for a while.
Oh, I appreciate that. We first connected, I've had others from some of your competitors on the podcast in the past, and we've talked about the nuts and bolts of HR and all of that. But I thought it would be interesting, given your background in kind of customer development and doing all that, to talk a little bit about business process outsourcing, right? Because when I think about what you guys do at ProCare, what I do at Trestle, in essence, that's what our clients are asking us to do, is outsource some of those business processes, some of those functions, so that they can really get to what they do best. And so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how you guys go about it and what business process outsourcing actually means from ProCare's perspective.
Sure thing. Yeah. So when we think of business process outsourcing, whether it's hospitality and dining, HR, finance, IT, it's exactly what it sounds like in the concept that you're hoping that you get one of two outcomes. The first is that you get an improved quality in that business unit. And second is that you're changing the cost structure from really more of a fixed cost to typically a variable cost that can flex with business needs. And typically when you explore business process outsourcing for the first time, it sounds scary. It sounds like Big Brotherish. And in
Right.
reality, it isn't. And that's something I've learned over the last 10 years. Currently, if you're listening to this podcast, you're outsourcing a phone or internet and electricity production. There's a lot of different things that you actually outsource that you're 100% comfortable with. And really, what ProCare does is that we operate under a managed services model. And what that allows us to do is to plug in with communities and operators to really drive best practices, compliance, and a great employee experience. Because let's face it, there's a lot of headwinds in the industry. Number one being workforce shortages. Number two being constantly changing legislation that impacts the industry at large. And so what we're really focused on is providing an experience where we delight our customers that allow them in a way to focus more on why they are in operation today, which typically is coming from a passion for serving others and providing care.
Yeah. I think, especially in the areas that we're doing the support and providing the outsourcing support in, those really like things that an operator has to keep their hands on, right? You think about, we deal with resident meals. You guys are helping manage and support and get their pay and their benefits and get all this done. Those feel like really high priority things. And I could see why an operator could be hesitant to outsource that, right? Getting electricity from the electric company Yeah, that's not something they even think twice about. And so if I'm a senior living operator, why would I want to look at outsourcing HR or food service support or any number of these different areas? What are the pros of doing something like that?
So what you're alluding to is really pros and cons, and agree. Let's start with the positive. I like that. First thing I'll call out is that outsourcing in any kind of business process outsourcing isn't inherently good or inherently bad, and it's not for everybody in every use case. There is not any one outsourced process where you can say in every single scenario for every operator and community, it makes sense no matter what. That's just not true. The pros to it are you're working with expert that you may or may not have access to if you went to market to hire those folks. And you might not have access for a few different reasons: geography, budget, network, etc. The second is you don't have to figure out scale. So if you're, especially if you're a growing or just changing, because it could be shrinking organization as well, you don't have to worry about the what if you partner with a new organization or you see some sort of growth or change or a pandemic hits, you have a partner that can help you flex. And I'd say the third thing is cost containment, cost stabilization. That doesn't necessarily mean cost savings. And I'll
Okay.
say why. Sometimes that does mean cost savings. But what it really does for a pro is makes it definable. It makes it forecastable for the foreseeable future. There's already enough what ifs in operations.
Right.
And this is bringing it to say, all right, within this percentage, I know what my costs are going to be for this rather variable part of our organization. And that allows us to plan better, which allows us to communicate to our stakeholders better. So overall, I think it's a great model that can provide some stability in an otherwise chaotic world. Those are the main pros that I see.
I'm glad you said that it was cost containment and not cost savings because it's almost like the shifting of the burden of that, really, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to charge you X per month to support your food service operations. And it's up to me now to contain those costs, to manage the cost on my end, because that's how I need to stay in business, right? And for them, like you said, it's just a line item. And so one of the things I'm curious about is, especially because you deal in the risk piece. How does that play into that? Like, how does risk shift from the operators? How do you guys manage that for staff and managing those HR functions?
Absolutely. Can get into that. And I'll try not to get into the weeds too much while still being clear. We actually operate on what's known as a co employment or PEO construct, and it could be an entire podcast on its own. What
Right.
you need to know about that, though, is that it actually fundamentally shifts the responsibility and some of the liability for employment related tasks from the operator or community level to ProCare HR. And so that puts teeth behind our program in a way that maybe just outsourcing to an expert wouldn't, because there's this idea of saying, all right, you can tell me that this best practice is X, Y, and Z, but if something hits the fan, I'm still the one holding the bag. And so I
Yeah.
really have to trust you. What this allows us to do is to share the risk and share the
Yeah.
liability. And it allows us to have skin in the game so that our interests are aligned and we can operate on a results based relationship in a way that I don't think is necessarily possible in our function if you were just outsourcing and hoping for the best. Even if you are working very qualified individuals, there still isn't the same shared what if that individual happens to give bad advice or doesn't foresee something around the corner.
Yeah. I think back to my time in contract food service management of we were employees of the contract holder, the food service company, but we still reported to the client, but the employment pieces, the risk, all that stuff fell on that management company. And there really wasn't this shared thing. And so I always felt there were definitely some cons to that setup, the way we had it. And obviously our goal with what we do is to try and make this the most positive experience possible. But there's obviously going to be, I don't necessarily call them cons, but potential challenges when you do this, right? And so, from your background and experience doing this, what would you say is like the top one or two of those challenges that an operator should just be aware of as they look at this kind of relationship?
Absolutely. So, speaking in terms of business process outsourcing overall, I would say it can be challenging if, on a scale of complexity from 0 to 10, the organization, as far as current state, is somewhere between a 0 and a 3. If you don't have some sort of level of structure today, e- everything about outsourcing a business process is going to feel like a lot, because you're working with an expert who has very detailed questions, that needs to know the answers to all of those things and the expectations so that they can be successful and provide great service. If you don't have any sort of complexity there, it's probably best to start with more of a consulting role, or working with some sort of software provider, or getting started somewhere. So that can be a con.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
And that gets into the second, I'd say, potential con of business process outsourcing, is that inherently you're supporting it, but you're not doing it. If
Right.
you believe that as part of your mission, you absolutely need to nail whatever business process that you're considering outsourcing, because that's part of your strategy. Business process outsourcing isn't the best place to do it, because it doesn't matter how good those people are, those organizations are. If you really believe that HR or food and hospitality are crucial to your identity as an organization, you'd be cutting off your right arm to outsource it. The
Yeah.
argument there is just, how crucial is that? It's a very important thing that we should take seriously, but as long as the results are being driven, does it really matter what color hat that individual is wearing?
Right.
That's typically where we get at. And the third, I would say, is it does require investment. We already called that out. Sometimes there can be cost savings. That's possible, but
Right.
it is more about cost containment. And if that cost to the organization is already very minimal, anything business process outsourcing wise will be an investment, not an offset.
I think you really hit the nail on the head with the like, if it's a core function piece, right? Because I think that sometimes everybody thinks everything is a core function. And that's how do you define that? And I do think that requires a little bit more of kind of understanding who I really am, what we really do, that kind of a thing, before you start looking at someone like ProCare or Trestle or whoever. I would imagine part of doing this well requires being, I don't want to say perfectly integrated, but having a fairly smooth integration. And so, with what you've done at ProCare and with some of your other roles in the past, what are some of the things that operators want to look at or need to be keenly aware of to make sure that they do have this effective integration of an outsourced service?
Best of the best before agreeing to the partnership entirely. maybe they've agreed to it in theory and they haven't said, yes, we're doing this. They share the organization's values and culture and ensure that that is something that can be aligned. And they also take time to take a step back and understand, for the first 90 days, how does this look actually from a time perspective? Who needs to be involved and understanding the lift there and time requirements and who needs to be pulled in. And then also from a post go live, post implementation or integration, they also understand what that communication looks like. Very real life examples. They take time to get into the weeds there.
Yeah.
The best possible business process outsourcing doesn't actually feel like you're outsourcing anything. Those individuals are part of your team. They just are experts. Oftentimes, I've even seen where sometimes there's even a shared email address if there's comfort and proper resources put behind that for privacy and security reasons, et cetera. And
Yeah.
it's just that so-and-so is our hospitality contact. So-and-so is our HR contact. And they have payroll resources and that's that person or whatever it is. It's not an us versus them and it's not a them versus us. It's truly a partnership and both sides have agreed to view it that way.
Yeah, I definitely experienced. I think some of the most successful client relationships I have are where they literally will be on a call with, I use this as an example. I was on a call with one of my clients and they were doing some kitchen design work. We were doing some value engineering of the process. And I wasn't introduced as Aaron from Trestle. I was introduced as Aaron, our corporate culinary director. And it kind of like what you said, it's that mindset that this isn't, yes, we've outsourced it. Yes, we're maybe trying to do that cost containment in this area, but it's really more about we have some shared values. We have a really strong partnership. And I think that speaks, like you say, to that. I'm curious though, a little bit about onboarding. I don't know that you hit on that. Like there's definitely, I think, opportunities and challenges there. So when you think about transitioning from doing something in-house to doing it outsourced, what are some of those things that can be done to really make sure that it's done smoothly and you don't really notice that it's a transition?
If the partner you're looking to work with hasn't, as part of the proposal, either scheduled or provided a process map, that's the first thing you should be doing. It should be in writing, discussed and agreed upon. And that is everything from there has to be a dialogue, especially at first. You're almost in this sense, I'll use a little bit of a analogy. You're agreeing to get married and then you're dating. Do you see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
we're seeing how that works. And then we're also seeing now, how do I load the dishwasher? And, when do you like to get up in the morning? And then figuring that stuff out as you go. So it is important. You're not going to be able to foresee everything, but to establish open lines of communication and to establish expectations. I think if there's number one thing, if you took away from this episode, it was proper expectation setting. Here is what us as an organization expect as you as a business process outsourcer. And here's how we're defining your success. And here's the level of communication we would like to see. How does that work with how you work? And how can we bridge those gaps? Because there's literally through the implementation process, it is crucial because that's where you're really building the trust. There isn't a way, there's never going to be a way, in my opinion, where you're going to have an operator or community and you're going to have a business process outsourcer and they meet like two puzzle pieces without any discussion whatsoever because you're trying to share language. Even saying for
Yeah.
us, what does this word mean to you versus how we might use it and how that communicates and all that kind of thing. So getting back to it, make sure you have a plan, that you've discussed the plan, you have time to review it with other stakeholders and that you agree to it and that you have a mechanism for both sides to hold each other positively accountable for making sure that those things get done. Because it's not just on the business process outsourcer to make sure this is successful. And it's not just on the organization either.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly clear and makes so much sense. As we kind of come towards the end of our conversation here, Do you have any example? Because we've been talking kind of in the theoretical and the what it looks like on paper, but give us some real world examples of how this you guys have done this, how this can be successful, and maybe what one or two of the bumps in the road were that you guys had to smooth out, that so people can see, oh, this is an actual case study that makes sense.
Absolutely. So speaking, while we do serve for-profit and non-for-profit organizations, speaking on the for-profit side with a management company, the management company was relatively large already and successful. Prior to joining up a partnership with ProCare, had decent HR outcomes, but still had X% of unfilled roles, still had X% of turnover, and they were basically close to industry baseline. And with the investment that they were putting into that function, they would expect better than baseline. We partnered, and a few very measurable things. They now felt comfortable to expand into new states that they didn't do business in today, because they didn't have to worry as much about the what ifs or the how do I learn insert state here. That's the first thing. Second thing, we were able to measure and track and get creative with how we were presenting it, the measured outcome for cost containment. And we actually were able to provide cost offset because of efficiencies, because of less overtime, because we had better processes, better outcomes for employee candidates, et cetera. And we looked at that at a per occupied unit per year outcome. And part of the reason we did that was because if operating expenses are X, usually the industry baselines are somewhere between 40 and 60% of that are employee related. And
Yeah.
so if we're able to be at all more efficient, you can start translating that down. What that allowed them to do, though, is to go back to the folks that were funding that and show goodwill of what they were trying to do to be good stewards of the money and the investment, thereby actually allowing further growth, which is
Oh
cool to see
yeah.
that flywheel go back. That's why it was so important for us to be on the same page. So I think that was it. The takeaway there, if you can't measure it, it's like a tree falling in the forest. If it does make a sound if no one's around, but no one cares. So you
Right.
have to be able to measure outcomes and understand what you're hoping to see and drive together towards those things.
I love that. Such a great example. So, Casey, every so often with the podcast, I'll go into what might be a topic in left field. And I'm like, well, how does this really apply? And I think when I think about the chefs or the executive directors or the operators that listen to this, I think there's a ton of great takeaways on how can vendors and industry partners like us support their business and really help them be able to push and grow and be better at caring for residents in the long run. So I'd love for you to share how anyone can pick your brain more about this process, learn more about ProCare HR, and just get in touch with you in general. So if you want to share your contact, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to get a hold of us is just www.procarehr.com. If you'd like to chat with me directly, because maybe you like my mustache or something, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, and then that way you don't have to feel like it's so formal. And you know what I would say, and even outside of that, if you're sitting here listening to this podcast and you have a problem in your operations, there are vendors like Trestle, like ProCare HR, and like so many that you see at these conferences that want to help. And if
Mhm.
your needs aren't being met today, communicate. Maybe there's a gap in service or something like that, but there's so many folks like you and I and so many others that we're close with that want to help, and they just need to know. So raise your hand and communicate, even if it's something that doesn't exist today. There's a lot of folks that would be happy to build that.
Absolutely. Casey, thank you again for taking the time and letting us deep dive in the business process outsourcing concept and being a guest on Tips from Trestle.
It's an honor. Thank you so much, Aaron.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestle. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.